What's up, everyone? My name is Chris Fanzon. This is the Hidden Doors podcast, and I just had a conversation earlier with Kevin Eastman. He's a great person. He spent 20 years in the Air Force, so hats off to Kevin, and we appreciate his service. And now he is a business consultant. He consults businesses on how to set a vision and the proper leadership to run their business effectively from the top down, so everyone is happy. He's also a moderator, moderator. Wow, moderator. Or he has admin access for one of the bigger self development communities on Facebook. I think it has almost 20,000 people in it. It was a great conversation. He also wrote a book. He has a book out, and so he's doing a lot of things, and it was a great conversation. I learned a lot from it. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you liked what you heard. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on more videos like this, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
Am I good? You see me? I'm moving?
Yeah, I see you.
Awesome.
Froze for a second.
Yeah, you did too a little bit. So, Kevin, thanks for coming on here. It's a pleasure to speak to you face to face. We've been messaging back and forth for what, a month now?
Oh, it sounds like a month. Pretty much, yes.
Thanks for coming on here. Appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
How have you been lately? How's life?
Good. It is what it is. You know, we are making the best of the situation that we have with the high gas prices in California. But what can you do about it? You know, you have to have gas to get places. So,
especially in California.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So we connected through Facebook, through I don't know if it's yours, but you're an administrator for a self-development group.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That has like what, 40,000 people in it now?
It's close to about 19,000.
18,000.
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
Got it. Maybe there's another one with 40. How did you start that group?
I did not. I actually was a member at one time, and then what happened was I saw a lot of things that I saw I can improve on to help the group be better managed and things like that. So I reached out to the founder of the group and volunteered to become an admin, and she said, "Sure."
Awesome. How long have you been doing that?
Right now, a little bit about 2 months now, and
pretty recent.
Some of the things, yeah, and since then the things that I saw that could be improved have improved, so that actually helped a lot.
The spam, right? It was the spam.
Yes, it was a bunch of spam. It was out of control.
Yeah, can't when you see 18,000 people, your first inclination is to like think if you spam people, they're all going to come and like, oh, wow, here's like a link to something that I'm doing, come buy it. And people usually get turned off by that. I learned that the hard way the first couple times, learning how to use Facebook groups. I was like, wow, this is really off-putting for people. This is not the way to do it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I sat back and thought about it a lot, because I have a marketing background. So I know the tactics that marketers use and salesmen use and things like that. So I know what they're doing. And the funny thing is, they don't care what they're doing. You know, they really don't, because in a group that size, if one person takes advantage of what they're selling, then it's a win for them. So they and by the time their post is seen, somebody else has seen it. You know, so I mean, by the time it's caught by an administrator or a moderator in a group, several people have seen that link. So the risk is worth the reward for them.
Short term, I guess it's a short term reward.
Exactly.
How did you get into self-development? And what's your
Well,
background? I think you were in the not the Navy. You were in Air Force. Is that correct?
I was in the Air Force for over 20 years.
Well, thank
But
you for your
what
service.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But what really got me into self-development was my own life, actually. So, I spent a lot of time in the Air Force helping other people, so to speak, because I spent over a decade as a recruiter and also spent had a 3 year stint as a drill instructor. So, so I was all about mentoring and helping people get to that next level and next step and things like that. What's interesting about that story is while I was helping other people, I wasn't helping myself. So
Mhm.
I came to a point where, okay, I didn't like the way life was going for myself, and I had to take on a mentor, and for myself. And actually he was one of the best mentors that I had in my life. What he told me was, he made me challenge the way I thought. And once he started doing that, then I started seeing, okay, a lot of the things that I'm going through as far as my life, I don't like. So I need to change. So that's how I kind of got into the realm of self-development. And from there it just blossomed, and I grew and had a passion for helping people get to their goals and things along that nature. And somewhere in that mix, a book was born.
You wrote a book?
I did. I actually wrote a book. The title of it is Don't Gamble on Life Improvement Until You Shift the Odds.
Don't gamble on life improvement until you shift the odds. Is that on Amazon?
Yes. It is. It is actually on Amazon. It's for the people up north in Canada. It's on Kobo. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's on Kindle books. It's on iBooks, Apple Books, I think. So
You're
it,
everywhere.
it's a lot of places that you can find it.
How was your experience writing that book? Like you've never written a book before, I would assume. How was that experience for you?
This was actually my first book, and it took me a long time to write it because I wanted to make sure it said what I needed it to say the way I wanted it to say it. So I wrote it. It took, well, almost 2 years to write it,
Oh
actually.
yeah.
And what
But
started
you're
with
taking into account editing and like the formatting and the book cover. That's a
yes.
lot of work that people don't realize. Like writing a book, you have to write it, but then you have to like make it look nice.
Yes, and have to, and then and then once you go into the process, a lot of people are confused by the title of the book. They're confused by the imagery on the cover, but I thought about it a lot. The first thing people see on my book cover is, besides the title's in bold yellow letters, and they see the word gamble, and they see a pair of dice on the cover. They start thinking, okay, this book's about gambling. No, it's not. It's a complete metaphor, all the way down to the image of the dice falling off the cliff.
Did you
So
think
there,
about simplifying it just to avoid that? Have you ever thought
no,
about that?
I did, but I was like, I want it that way because I want
Yeah.
people to ask the question, and then I can explain it to them, and then it's like, oh, you did put a lot of thought into this. So it's one of those conversation pieces. So I decided to leave it the way it is, as it is.
Yeah.
So and when once people read the book, they will understand that it is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for a lesson I had to learn throughout my life. Don't try to change your life until you change your thinking. And that's the overall message of the book. What I do is I take people through a series of topics that I think contribute most to the chaos that we encounter in life. And I break those things down and show that a lot of times the chaos that we go through in life and the obstacles that we encounter, a lot of them are placed in our way by us, not by someone else. And that I try to get people to look at things in a different perspective, because what I do when I talk with people in groups and I tell them about what I'm trying to do, I encourage them to develop what I call an inside out mentality. And what that means is, when things go wrong, check you first. If you're okay, then you can look for outside sources of the misfortune. But oftentimes what we do is when things go wrong, the first thing we look at is something else. We don't look at ourselves. And I want people to do that because I found in my own experience that a lot of the things that I've encountered, I actually could have fixed by looking at me first.
2 years of the making of a beautiful book. I want to get myself a copy. How much is it
Okay.
on How much is it on Amazon?
Well, for a digital copy, it's less than $5. And
Less
then
than
for,
$5. Beautiful.
yes. And then for the paperback is right now, until Amazon feels like not being generous anymore, they have it 25% off. So it's less
Oh,
than
nice.
$15. So what I like to tell people is the stuff that I talk about in my book, I have seen people pay hundreds and even thousands of dollars for at seminars, and I have it for less than $20. You might be able to change your life just that easily. Because what I do is I break things down so simply. It's not to insult anybody's intelligence or anything like that, but to show sometimes we make our lives more complicated than they need to be.
Isn't it crazy that you can spend 20 years in the Air Force and you live an entire life where you've learned a whole bunch of things? You spend 2 years taking all of this information, putting it in a book, thinking about the cover, thinking about what you need to say. Probably it's 200 to 300 pages, and someone can take all of your life experience for like $5 and just learn how to be a better person. It's like it's such a weird thing because to go and experience your life would take years and money, but I can just read a book and learn it within 6 hours. I might not full have the full experience of you, but I get the full perspective of someone who has lived that life, which
Sure.
is so freaking valuable.
Well, what I do is the whole intent behind my book is to help people, because somebody had to reach out and help me. I do what I say is I did the hard part for you. I experienced this stuff, but I found ways to get it done. So what I've done is I've taken the guesswork out for the reader. The hard part that we have, or the challenge that I have, in a way, is breaking through what I call the most challenging obstacle a person faces is their ego. When self-development is not an easy genre to begin with, because the first thing a person does is they say, "Oh, I don't need that book. There's nothing wrong with me." And I tell them, okay, well, there was nothing wrong with me either until I found out there was. So you have to start somewhere. So what I do is a lot of things. Remember, I told you earlier that is a lot of things that were a lot of thought went into the format of the book, and the order of the chapters are no different. The first chapter is an introduction. The second chapter is where we actually start building the foundation, finding out why things are the way they are. Then I progress to other things that have contributed to the chaos. And then about chapter 10, because there are 12 chapters, but about chapter 10 is where I started turning the corner. Okay, now I know all of these things. Now let me put this into practice. So in a way, it's kind of like I'm establishing myself as a person that went through these things. Here's what I did to fix it, and here's how you put it into practice. Maybe you can use it as well. So there was a lot of tedious things trying to figure out and tinkering with it. Where do I want certain sayings? Where those things. So it's. I think it's a book that will help a lot of people, but the challenge is getting them to know that it exists, and then breaking the stereotype of the stereotypical self-help book. Oh, I don't want them to think something's wrong with me. Well, there doesn't necessarily have to be anything wrong with you in order to improve something.
Yeah. A lot of when I before I was an avid reader, um, I I don't know I don't know why I thought this way because maybe in some cases it's true, but I was like, well, if they were so successful and they were making so much money, why are they writing about it? Like, don't they have like other things to do? Like, and it's like when you see someone trying to like push an investment on you, it's like, I need you to like come buy this investment strategy. It's like, well, if you already know the investment strategy, why do you need me to pay for you for the strategy? And like that's why there's like some scam artists out there that maybe like turn everyone else off. And in my head, I was like, if they're writing this book, it has to be a scam. And then I started reading a lot, and I was like, okay, that was a stupid preconception of what you know books are, and when people try to give back by spreading their knowledge, it's a bad misconception. And
Sure.
then every once in a while, when I'm on a spree of like, I've read all these books, I'm like, whatever. Like, I got it. I got it. I know what people are saying. I understand what you're talking about. I don't need to read this book. And then I read
And
the book, and then
that's
I'm like,
exactly, yeah.
yeah. And then I read the book. I'm like, oh, wait, no, again, I don't know what I'm talking about. I should have opened up more. It's every time when you think you don't need to know it, and then you read it, you're like, wow. And it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be a book and just be a conversation with someone. A lot of the times when you think you don't need to know it, you don't need to hear it, you don't need other perspectives. My experience has been, oh, I should have thought that way because I actually like learned a lot.
Well, here's a funny thing that as a fraternity member, I mentor a lot of young men and women. When I talk with them, we had a group session with a lot of young people, and what I told them is something that I learned the hard way. Of course, I had to learn it by experience, but I told them, everybody that you meet, and I had all of the parents in the room raise their hand. Every adult, I had them raise their hand. I said, and I want you guys to look around and see all of these hands up. Now, I said, every one of these hands that are up has taken a unique path to get to the place they are. But any one of these hands in this room could be holding the information you need in order to get where you want to go. Your job is to talk to enough of these people to find that person that has that information. And it's like, whoa, their eyes were like, "Hey, this dude's brain works in a different way." So it's things like that that I try to do with my book, to explain, what I tell people, I like to tell them this in a funny way, is when you read my book, the first thing I want you to do is forget what you know and just read it, because you already have the preconceived notion of what you're going to expect. It's not like that. I did not write my book to sound like a self-help book. I wrote it to sound like I was having a conversation with the reader, and that's the feedback that I've gotten from readers, which I appreciate so much. It is unbelievable when you get a message from somebody that says, what you told me helped me change my life for the better. And that's what it's all about for me.
Even if it's just one person, it probably feels good. But I'm sure you have many more
Even,
than one.
even if it's one person, the book has done what I intended it to do.
Here's
The
the
more,
funny
the merrier, of course.
how did you it's ironic, right? You go from a drill sergeant probably teaching and motivating people, and then you feel like
That's a
you're
nice
not
way of putting it.
you feel like you're not motivating or helping yourself. At what point do you realize that? Like, because it's not as if you're a drill sergeant, I'm assuming you're helping people in certain ways mentally. It's a tough thing to like go to the Air Force and probably have to do a ton of exercises and drills. It's mentally straining. I'm sure
Sure.
you're there to help people get there, get past those hard times. But then it's ironic that, like, you would think someone who's doing that is also doing self-talk to themselves, and it seems like you weren't doing that. It seems like
You are correct.
you need your own
I
drill sergeant.
I was not doing that, and that's one of the things that I stressed throughout the book is the word balance. It was what I tell people is the key to life, in most things in life, is maintaining balance. And where we run into the issues is where we run into imbalance. And most of the time, that imbalance is created by us. It's not created by what's around us. So what I had to find out for myself was to, I was professionally, I was doing great. I had a successful career in the Air Force. I was teaching people every 6 weeks. they were coming into training, they were graduating, and they were going on with their Air Force careers. But personally, for me, I was a train wreck inside because I was not doing the things I was telling them to do. It sounds kind of hypocritical in a way, but I was doing the things that got me by instead of getting me over, so to speak. And I finally hit a wall. It was like, okay, I'm sick of this. What's going on? I'm not being fulfilled. What part of this am I missing? And that's where it came to, okay, let me talk to somebody. And I didn't have to talk to a therapist. My mentor was not a therapist at all. He, and
How did you find your mentor?
well, it was a combination. I mean, I speak about this particular mentor because he's the one that kind of pulled the trigger. So, figuratively speaking, he was the one that says, I have listened to you time and time again talk about and blame everybody and anybody for your misfortune. Have you ever looked in the mirror? And I was stumped. I was like, no, I've never looked in the mirror. And he goes, well, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go home. I want you to look in the mirror. I want you to tell me what you find. I don't want you to blame anybody else. I want you to look at you, your part that in that situation. He said, because you have a part in everything you encounter. It may not be the determining part, but you had a part nonetheless. And a lot of those situations that you were in, you could have probably avoided by you doing something first. And it triggered me. And he said, we're going to pick this up in 48 hours. And 2 days later, he said, tell me what you found. And I said, I found a lot of stuff I didn't like. He said, you know what, start changing those things and you'll start changing the course of your life. And I cannot thank him enough. Unfortunately, he's deceased now, but what
Mhm.
he get with the impact that he had on me is immeasurable.
That's great. So that was your inflection point, was that mentor. When you started on this path, did you start like reading certain books or speaking to life coaches, or like what was your first few moves forward?
Ironically, I had never read self-development books prior to that. It just was not something that even dawned on me to try. I was going a lot of trial and error. I bumped my head a lot, and even to this day, I haven't read a lot of self-development books because I was writing one at the time and I wanted everything to be authentic. I didn't want to take somebody else's thoughts and put into my book and say I said it. So I purposely stayed away from that. And once I did that, I got an authentic product out of my book. So what I did was it was a lot of trial and error and bumping my head and doing things cold, so to speak, and learning the lesson and applying it.
Did you like to write before you wrote the book?
I was writing here and there. That it's part of the Air Force's job. As a Air Force member, you have to write performance reports and things of that nature. As far as writing books, I had the earliest thing I can remember writing was seventh grade, but it tapered off. It was an autobiography back then. But my book actually wasn't, it didn't start out as a book. It started off as a series of personal essays that I wanted to use for self reflection. And as I wrote it, it was like, wow, um, I'm not the only one that can benefit from this. And I at that point, I was like, why not publish it? Somebody else can learn these lessons too.
Can you hear any background noise from me?
Not at all.
Got it. Did you did you find that you were writing personal essays, but then when you write a book, it's like you end up it's longer than you think. Like when you're first writing, you're like, "Oh man, this is a little longer than I thought." Did you did you find that struggle like when you first had converted your writing of personal essays, I believe you said, into a book, or is that like almost easily translatable into the book that you have now?
Well, it actually was translatable, and even the with the book that as it is now, there's still more that can be said. So there are a couple of ideas swirling around in my head for a couple of follow-ups. So those are things that I'm still throwing around there. But this one, I think will actually help a lot of people. Like I said earlier, the challenge is getting them to know it exists and what it can do for them. Because, excuse me, because there's nothing wrong with anybody. The funny thing is, I always say this: well, there's nothing wrong with anybody, but the problem is the self-help industry generates about $9 billion a year, so there's something wrong with somebody.
Yeah.
you know if one of the funny things I say, well, if there's never anything wrong with anybody, then why do we have the problems? There's something wrong with somebody lying somewhere.
No one's perfect.
Exactly.
What outside of like I know the book is not self-help, but the book is focused on taking an inner look at yourself, stop blaming everybody else, and I'm sure that's an oversimplified version, but are there even if it's in the book or outside of the book, are there other practical things that you've learned in your life that have helped you a lot? It could be like I learned to meditate, or I learned to have a certain diet, or how exercising is good for me. Like, are there other practical things out? Because first, you got to get your inner stuff right. You got to
Sure.
have the right mindset. Blah blah blah. You got to. That's probably the most important thing to first start off with, and then like the next step is like, do you make incremental gains in your life? Like, I started a business, I did this. Like, are there other areas that you're moving into as well, and
Well,
other
it's
practical
interesting you would say that, because there are a lot of things that you can take from the book. It's not just a matter of it. Well, to me, it's like, there are other things that you can learn from the book, so to speak, and it can go into any different directions. The mindset is the first thing you have to do, to take care of, but that's the hardest part, and I take people through that, through the book. I tell them, we get stuck in the boundaries of our comfort zone, and the comfort zone is a great place. The only problem is nothing ever grows there. So you have to take that into consideration. And one of the things I tell people, and even in the first chapter, is personal growth is a byproduct of discomfort. Nobody ever does anything differently once they're comfortable. If you look at it in a sense of when you lay in the bed, what's the first thing you do? You toss and turn until you get into a comfortable position. Once you find that comfortable position, what happens? You fall asleep. So nothing and once you get into a comfort zone, when you find a comfortable position, it it doesn't promote action. It actually promotes inaction. You don't want to move from that spot, because you're comfortable. So what I tell people in my book is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and you will find that you will grow a lot more.
other techniques to do that? Like, what if someone's like, but
Well,
I like being comfortable? Like, are there techniques to push someone to be uncomfortable and almost adopt adopt it, feel better about it, like make that their new way of life? Like, I'm gonna start getting more uncomfortable, but like to me, it's like you set like goals of where you want to be in life, and it's like, hey,
oh,
I want to
absolutely.
be here, and I'm gonna have to be uncomfortable. So what's more important, getting this goal or being uncomfortable? I'm going after this goal. This is what I want to do my whole life, and then it's like you push yourself to be in those positions. Are there other techniques that you've learned that you've put into practice that help you push yourself into more uncomfortable situations?
Well, that is actually where chapter 10 in the book comes into play. You mentioned goal setting. That's one of the things that I had to learn. If you want this goal, if you want it bad enough, you'll go and do what you need to do to get there. If you don't, you're not going to do anything. So you have to, and one of my favorite sayings that I heard, I don't know who said it, and it really doesn't matter who said it, but when you're on the internet, you see a person, they put a famous person's face on it and stick their name on it and say they said it. But the saying says, set a goal so high that you must transform into the person who can achieve it. And it was like, whoa, that makes so much sense to me. So you have to be able to do, you have to be willing to, if you want to get a goal, what I tell people in the book is you have to be willing to go over, under, around, or even through any obstacle that's standing between you and a goal. And you have to want it that bad. And if you're sick of doing things, one of the techniques that I learned is, if you're tired of something, you have to become very tired of it. I mean, to the point where the mere thought of you maintaining that course of action makes you want to throw up. Because if you're not that sick of it, you're not going to do anything to change it. Because your brain is conditioned to justify your comfort level. You have to push yourself through that, and that's hard to do for a lot of people. It was hard for me at one point. But I would also, uh, since I was younger, I would always go against the grain. Even into my Air Force career, people used to tell me what I could and couldn't do, what I should and shouldn't do. And I learned real quickly that nobody can tell you what's going to satisfy you. They can only tell you what's going to satisfy them. So when I wanted to become a drill instructor, the first thing out of everybody's mouth, oh, you don't want to do that. Da, da, da. Okay, watch this. I became a drill instructor. When I wanted to be a recruiter, there you go again. Oh, it's a career killer. You don't want to do that. You're not going to make rank. I made rank twice as a recruiter, and was very successful. Stayed over a decade. I had the number one recruiting team in the country in back-to-back years, and was never out of the top 10 over 6 years. So that was another. Okay, watch this. So I
It's almost like
have I
fuel.
have
It gives you the fuel.
right, exactly, and that's what I enjoy. In a figurative way, I enjoy proving naysayers wrong. You don't tell me what I can and can't do. I do that.
Can you fly a jet? Like, can you fly?
I cannot. And I had no desire to learn either.
Interesting.
That was
How do you?
not my thing.
So, what was your experience in the Air Force then? Like, you in my head, I'm so stupid. In my head, I'm like, Air Force, planes, people, you must always fly planes. It's probably just one tiny aspect.
It's ironic you would say that, because as a recruiter, I had to deal with that question all the time. And I have a very standard answer. 4% of the entire Air Force is what flies planes.
Really? That
So
is
there are
interesting.
over 400,000 people in the Air Force. Only 4% of those people actually get in a plane and do this.
So, what are the others? There's got to be people who work on the planes, like
There
technicians.
there are people that work on the planes. There are people that schedule the planes to go places. There are people that tell the pilots where to go. There are people that they identify targets for the pilots to do what they need to do.
Got
So
it.
there are a lot of support positions. But when people hear Air Force, they automatically think everybody flies, and most people in the Air Force don't.
Yeah. It's like, well, people in the Navy, do they always go on ships? Do 100% of the Navy go on ships? I guess they have to.
They don't actually.
No.
Believe it or not, there are some people in the Navy that don't ever go on ship. That you have to, as a recruiter, you have to learn all of these things, because people have those preconceived notions, and you have to break through that. Ironically, for me, when I was a recruiter for the Air Force, I was in my first 3 years, I was in an army town. I had an army base in the city I recruited from. So I had to break through all of the stereotypes that the army had and what they said I could and couldn't do. I had a kid that came into my office one day and told me that the army recruiter told him that nobody in the Air Force goes overseas. And I'm looking at my plaque from South Korea behind me and go, they didn't tell me that, you know. So there are a lot of things that you have to overcome, the preconceived notions, and it's okay, it's just it's funny when you hear some of the things like that. It's like, wow, really? An army guy can tell you what I can and can't do. Wonderful. What else did he tell you I can't do? You know,
Are you done with the Air Force? Are you ever going to go back?
No, I retired from active duty a few years back, and I have no desire to go back. I miss it every once in a while, just for the camaraderie and things like that. But as far as active service, nah, man, I'm done with that.
Did you
Leave that
pick
to
up
the.
any Did you pick up any good habits from being in the Air Force?
Oh, absolutely.
You make your
I am
bed at
a.
5 a.m. You
I
wake up at 5 a.m. and
actually
make your bed?
every time I get out of my bed, it's made.
Really?
It is, and
Oh
that's not
man.
from that is not from the military. That's
Oh,
just
okay.
me. That's just me being, the way I am, and there is an interesting story. There is a guy that was a Navy SEAL that made a speech at a college commencement, and he talked about the importance of making your bed first thing in the morning. He said it's a small task, but it's a task that is completed, and that task can lead to another task and another task and another task. So the whole overall message from him was, if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. And it just kind of grew from there. I was like, that man, this dude thought about that a lot.
It's a nice story to
It
go
is.
from changing the world to making your bed in the morning. My wife is a big time make your bed in the morning. I'm not. Like I just for some reason I just don't do it. I can't do it. My wife would love for me to adopt that as a habit. What other habits do you have? Do you have any like what do you do when you wake up in the morning? Do you meditate? Do you have any other like interesting habits you do?
No, just the standard, what do I have to get done today? What's on the agenda? How am I going to get it done? Am I going to get it done? Those types of things. Did I get everything from yesterday done today, yesterday? And it's like, oh, those types of things. So it's you learn a lot of things that you probably don't realize you learn. When you do certain things every day for so long, you just pick up habits and they just become second nature to you. I talk about forming habits in my book, and everybody knows about the studies that they've had where a habit grows in 21 days, those
Yeah.
type of things. But I kind of take a different spin, and I take a different spin on a lot of things in my book because I want people to look at things from a different perspective. But like I always say, it takes that long to make a habit, and also takes that long to break a habit. But it depends on the amount of emotional weight you attach to that habit. Like, I use an example for myself. Um, Eating barbecue. I love barbecue. So while not eating barbecue for 21 days won't be a problem, but the emotional attachment I have to the taste of barbecue is going to take a lot longer than 21 days to get out of my head. It's just not
You might
going
not
anywhere.
ever be able to get it out.
Exactly. So, you have to kind of develop that discipline. I could eat barbecue every day, but I'd have to have different cuts and those types of things. I couldn't just eat the same barbecue every day. It would get old. But I do things like that in my book to get the reader to expand their mindset about, oh man, yeah, you're right. It's not that hard. Because a lot of people look at self-development and self-improvement as this daunting task. And the way that I explain it is like, it can be if you're looking at it as a 10,000 step flight of steps. But if you look at it as one step at a time, it's not as difficult.
Yeah. Can't cross an ocean in one step.
Yes,
Yeah. That's the type of step that makes you actually not want to move forward in the first place. If you like
exactly.
look at
It,
something like, oh my God, how the hell am I going to accomplish that? You know what? Let me just grab this bag of Doritos, sit on the couch, and just enjoy my
exactly.
life.
Exactly.
One step
And
at a time.
I tell people take one step at a time. But see, the hardest part is making the decision to make the first step. Because a lot of people get into, if you look at it this way, and I put this in the book, you're going to read it and you're going to laugh because we've already had the conversation. But if you look at it in a sense, if you don't like where you're going, what you can do is you can stop where you are, make a slight turn, and start walking again. You know what you're doing now? You're going in a completely different direction than you were. It's that simple. But a lot of people don't realize how simple it is to change directions. You can still see that other direction, that you were going, and you can see that path. And if that's where I need to go, you can make an adjustment and go to that path. But just by making that decision, okay, I don't want to do it this way. I want to do it just slightly different. Now you're going in a completely different direction.
You may not. So I hear some things like, well, you don't want to set a goal for that long because who knows if you're able to get there. Like, why would you even set a goal? You might not get there. But to your point, right? It's like you're moving somewhere. You have an option. You can stay put, get nowhere, or move towards the goal. If at any point you find it hard to get there, change direction a little bit and you go around the obstacle, you go under it, you go through it. And
Exactly.
let's say you have four of those, and then okay, the goal's still in sight. You go through obstacles, and then halfway through, you're like, no, not that goal, that goal, and you point slightly in another direction, but you're still moving forward. So it doesn't really just because you don't get the exact same spot that you looked at, and you're like, I want to get there, but you still got somewhere and you went somewhere forward. Whereas if you said no, I don't know where I'm going, I'm just going to sit down, you get nowhere. So as long as you're moving forward is the goal, right?
Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that because one of my favorite things that I say is as long as you're moving forward, you're not where you used to be. So it's one of those things. It's if you look at it in that sense, it you mentioned a lot of things that I talk about in the book. I talk about setting goals and things of that nature. But what I also tell people is to set their goal and then break that ultimate goal down into what I call sub goals, because the sub goals are a lot easier to achieve and it keeps you motivated going towards the ultimate goal. And I use an example of losing weight. A lot of people can relate to that. I need to lose weight. But then they say, I need to lose 15 pounds. Okay, that's not okay. How long you're going to take to do that? That could be over. Is it over 10 years? Is it over a month? Is it over a week? Those type of things. So what I use is a very well known technique is the SMART technique. The your goal has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be attainable, it has to be realistic, and it has to be time sensitive. So if you take that one simple phrase, I want to lose 15 pounds, if you take that and just add over the next 2 months, you have hit every single one of those elements in that smart formula, and it keeps you focused on that. And then you add on there by losing 1 to 2 pounds per week. Now you have a goal that you can realistically achieve, and it's easier to stay on track to maintaining it.
Yeah, I like that. I need to get my I need to get my ass exercising a little more. I uh I started I started a new morning routine like a couple weeks ago. So I I stretch, then I'll after my stretch I'll do like 20 push-ups and like 20 air squats. And I'm a little bit winded after that. It's a little embarrassing. Like I haven't worked out in a little while. So I got to build that up and so I need a little sub goal there. I need to get my exercising up.
And all it
It,
takes is the little bitty things. It doesn't take a lot. A lot of people think, oh, I gotta go work out or I gotta go run a marathon. Well, no, you don't go out there and run 26.2 miles. You don't do that from sitting on the couch. You have to build up to that. Start small and then you go and progress up to that 26.2 miles. I don't think anybody has ever gotten up off the couch after not exercising for 3 or 4 years and went out and ran a 26-mile marathon that it's not a realistic goal. But I'm gonna walk around the block, for a while. I'm gonna go around, like, where we live. We have a park around where I live, and the one time around that park is a quarter of a mile. Go do that one time, then you go the second time, then you go a third time, and pretty soon you're not winded. It's not that it
Yeah.
really isn't that difficult. And I use the losing weight as an example because a lot of people can relate to that one. It can be applied to anything, anything in life.
So, what else outside the book are you doing? Do you have a business?
I actually am a freelance business consultant. I have a business management consultant. I help businesses uh, kind of see where they can improve if they need to improve. Organizational development is a big thing for me. Implementing change, if you're doing that, how people are going to receive that. I help people that are in business evaluate their business to find out if what their vision is actually what their culture is, because the two may not always gel together. You get if you look at a lot of business owners, they are so far removed from the process at the bottom line, or at the lower levels. They're looking at profit margin, whereas the people that are working are looking at morale. So it's like you got to make that connection there, because if their morale is better, your profit margin is going to be larger. If they're not happy, they're going to do exactly what they need to do not to get fired. You
Yeah.
get you get no extra effort, you know.
You're doing like what Jocko. You know who Jocko is? Um,
No.
Jocko, what's his last? He's one of the authors that wrote Extreme Ownership. Have you ever read that
Hmm.
book? Have you read
I
it?
have not.
No. He's I think he was a Navy SEAL, if I'm correct, or something like that. And now he does similar things. He's a uh I don't know what he owns his own business, but he like helps businesses with their leadership,
Hmm.
helps them like build a path forward, sort of like what you're talking about. Like, what's your vision? How can you be more cohesive from the top down? Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like to have a drill sergeant background also helps a lot when you're like, hey, look, I know what I'm talking about. Like I was in the Air Force for 20 years. You need better leadership. I feel like that has to help a lot. When you're
Well,
like,
a lot of people, a lot of businesses that you talk to, when they are, a business owner, they think they know everything, and that's good. You're supposed to have that confidence. But like my dad taught me from growing up, way back, you aren't right about everything. And when you're not, you have to own that. You have to be able to say, I don't know, or I didn't know that. The minute you think you know everything, one of my favorite quotes from my grandmother, she used to tell me this. She said, you can't tell stupid people nothing because they already know everything. So, and it stuck with me for years, and I use it all the time. It's like, you think about that, that made so much sense. So you have the minute you think you know everything is where you start losing ground. So it's tough for a lot of people to come to that realization that I'm not as effective as I can be. Can you help me? That is one of the toughest things for a lot of people to be able to say, I need help. Because I want to figure it out myself. Well, everybody can't figure everything out themselves. Otherwise, we would not have the problems we have in our society.
yeah. Do you find that the companies that you consult are like they don't do they have like a mission statement? Do they have a goal? Do they have a clearly defined like vision of what they want to
Well,
what
of course, and they have that vision. The problem that they have is they have lapses in their leadership style because they get comfortable with what they're doing, and it
human nature
works for
kicks in,
them.
right? When as soon as
It
you
works for them. As long as you get something that it works, I'm staying right here, stuck. You know, I'm staying right here within this comfort zone, and that's what I always tell people. You in your comfort zone, you stay there because everything is familiar. The problem with that is nothing changes because everything is familiar. So you have to be able to take the step outside of the comfort zone in order to learn something. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. But if you put it in perspective like I do in the book, I say the journey outside of your comfort zone is a wild one until you realize that journey outside of your comfort zone is a one-step journey. All it takes is one step outside.
I love it. I love it. Um, so consulting businesses to have better visions, writing a book or wrote a book. Well, how about this? Wrote a book, but it seems like you have more ideas. So you might be writing more stuff on the side. Are you gonna if you do that, will you write a second completely different book or an addendum to the first book?
Well, I actually had to write a second version to the first book, so it's kind of a muddled answer to your question.
Got it.
So once I wrote the book the first time, I wrote it and I published it, and then I started getting feedback, and it triggered something. Okay, there are people that aren't getting what I was intending, so let me go back and kind of further explain what I'm going through. So a second edition of the first book was done. To answer the other part of that question, am I writing more? Absolutely. I'm actually trying my hand at a fictional novel.
Oh, okay.
And and
But that
and
won't help anyone, right? Like you're not trying to teach anyone. It's more of just a fun thing.
well, actually, it will teach people a lot. It's a thriller, so and there is a message in there as well. But
Maybe you've hit on something. A fiction self-development book that like takes someone's life, but it's a
pretty
fiction
much,
story, but it
it,
teaches
it, it
you.
it's kind of along that lines.
Interesting. That's a nice spin on it. I don't think I've ever heard of that before for
Oh,
like
we got stuck
self-development.
again.
You hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
I can hear you, but I can't see. I see just your image, like your profile picture.
I
You
don't know
know?
what happened, but I can hear you. I can hear you just fine. Do you
Okay.
need the
No,
video or no?
no.
Okay.
I'm gonna post the video, but it's not a big deal because it's really just an audio anyway.
Okay.
All right. Well, I mean, at this point, anyway, we're rounding out the hour, so I guess
Yes.
we can close out here. But what I like to close out with, Kevin, is I always like to ask this one last question. What are three things that you would tell anyone to be more successful in their lives? What would be those three things that someone you recommend doing?
Oh, okay. Well, let me see. Let me think about that for a second. But I know one of the things is make sure that you put things into perspective instead of into perception, because your perception controls a lot more than you think, and it may or may not gel with the actual circumstances. So that's one thing I would tell people. The second thing I would tell people is to take things as they are, instead of trying to change the circumstances. Or what I say is, change your behavior to fit the circumstances. Don't expect the circumstances to change according to your behavior. So, that's where we end up getting the imbalance, is because we try to change circumstances to fit our behavior instead of changing our behavior to fit the circumstances. And the third thing I would always say is for me, one of the most powerful things I say in my book is a hand up is better than a hand out, and the effects last longer. So if you have a chance to help someone, do it if you can. So
Love
those
it.
are the three things I would tell a person to do if they want to be more successful in their lives. And if you're successful in that way, all of the business, all of all of those things will fall into place if you take care of you first.
Nailed it, Kevin. It was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for your service of 20 years in the Air Force. And what is the book again? Can you say the book one more time that's available everywhere?
Absolutely. The book is Don't Gamble on Life Improvement Until You Shift the Odds. and it's available on Amazon, on all of the major platforms. You can also go to my website, www.kevineastman, one word, .com, and it has all of the links to where you can find the book. It even has a free preview of the book on there. I put the first two chapters on the book for free for people to get. And there are a lot of other things on there that I talk about as far as my blog, and talk about transformative thinking and things along those lines as well.
Beautiful. I'm also going to put that stuff in the description of the YouTube post. This way,
Okay.
everyone can click on the link as well. Appreciate you coming on. Have a good rest of your day, and I will be talking to you more because we're in the same Facebook group, and I see you post and respond to comments, and I post, and sometimes I respond. So we'll be interacting more. It was good
I,
to.
I try to put in there and try to be the moderator and things along that line. So it's difficult in a group that size, but we do the best that we can as the admin team.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Take it easy.
All
Bye.
right.